will call the Finance Commission meeting of June 3rd to order, 6:31. This evening, we're getting near, fortunately, we're getting near the end of our review and our recommendations. What we'd like to accomplish is we have 3 sets of minutes that were sent out. We'll deal with those at the end, but we'll look at those and pass them if they're acceptable. When we last met on the 3rd, we went through and made some modifications to the town manager's revised suggested budget. And we can continue that process this evening. And we'll have to finish it up this evening, I think, so that we can complete the recommendation for the council. And then what I hope to do is, with the thoughts that are completed tonight, is to get the recommendation out to the entire council tomorrow, not the council, but the commission, tomorrow for your feedback. And we have a meeting tentatively scheduled for Wednesday evening, if need be, to have a further discussion, or we can just rely on editorial comments when you get a chance to review it, which is pretty much what we've done in the past. But we do have Wednesday night as a safety net if we need it. And then the council meets next Tuesday, I believe, to make their final decision on the budget. Looks like Barbara's joined us, so Tracy's the only person, and she's probably wrapping up her other meeting, so she'll join us soon, I'm sure. I sent out, by the way, very late, so you may not have even seen it, an email that Tracy had sent to me, which had some information about some extensions of time, if you will, to town government, to town meetings, which we are not a town meeting any longer, and a few other items. If you didn't get to see it, I think it's things that Anna had brought up to us verbally in the past, where the town meeting, because of the form of their government, could not meet. You can't bring 200 people into a room. So that was more geared toward that type of process rather than the town council and a finance commission type of thing. So anyway, when you get that, if you look at it, if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to share it. I believe one other option was for the council to extend by a month the budget process, and I think the state is lining up to a 3-month extension. But I believe from what discussions we've had in the past from Jim in particular, that the council doesn't want to take that road at this point in time. So we're going to proceed as if they're going to have to review and pass the budget next Tuesday. So, having said all that, I'll throw out the question: does anybody have any items that they would like to put up for discussion regarding the revised town manager's budget?
I think the one big item we have is the schools.
Okay. And how do we want to, did anyone start off the discussion on that?
Well, did anybody find out about the unemployment?
I've reached out to Anna. She was not certain, and she has not gotten back to me yet. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody talked to the school department.
No, I did talk to Lisa very little bit. She was supposed to get back to me today, and I was supposed to get back to her today and didn't have the opportunity, but was what we had thought, that if they don't, her opinion from what she thinks, it's if they don't make a move by July 1st, they have to pay them through August 30th.
Okay, and so I guess the question, when does call it the pink slip, for lack of a better word, when does that take place? Immediately, or does this at the start of the school year, I think?
I thought it was June 15th.
It is June 15th.
Well, that's the date they have to notify. I'm wondering when it takes effect.
Well, it takes effect immediately.
No, I think it takes effect July 1st.
July 1st, but I mean, it doesn't wait till the beginning of the school year.
No.
It's the beginning of the fiscal year, Bob.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Okay. Well,
and I guess that the other question was, if the teachers, now some teachers are on a 52-week pay schedule and or a 26 because they get paid every other week, and other teachers do not do that. They receive X amount of paychecks on the last day of school.
Mhm.
So if you lay off teachers effective July 1 and they are collecting unemployment, I guess what I wanted to know is what about that salary money? Is that salary money saved towards salaries for the next fiscal year? So maybe they would be able to bring them back in September using that money? I guess that's, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
But I think what my understanding was the teachers could defer their annual salary so that they would have some to collect over the summer, if you will. Others wanted to collect it all so that when they left school in June or July 1st, we'll call it, they had received their full annual salary. But we're talking fiscal year July to July. And I think that even though their contracts and things differ because they're on a work year, basically a work year that goes from September through June, that they still are on a, from a budgetary point of view, July to a July basis. So I think if people are not going to be rehired, their lack of income would start July 1st. But anything that they're owed between now and July 1st is a fiscal year 20, the current year budget. So that's funded by the fiscal year 20 budget, not by fiscal year 21. So we're only
Right.
concerned about items after July 1st.
Well, I guess that's my concern. If there are teachers that choose to get paid in the 26 weeks and they are laid off July 1, the salary that they're not paid July and August, could they use that money to rehire them in September to help with the payroll?
I think all teachers are hired on a 10-month basis.
Okay.
And they have an opportunity to spread that out for budgeting purposes, for their own budgeting purposes, to spread it out over the year. But all the money they receive, if they make whatever they $60,000 for this year, they'll get $60,000 by June 30th. Now, some of them, like Karen said, could get like 6 or 7 checks June 30th, but it's out of fiscal 20 money. It's paying them for this year's salary.
Okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
Like technically they don't get paid in July and August, but they have the ability, which, a few do, I don't think a big percentage, of taking those like 6 checks. Most of them will get paid June 30th or 29th, whatever it is, that lump sum for the rest of their pay from this year.
That clear everything up?
And I do think my impression seems to be that the layoffs, quote unquote, could potentially be more. I think there were X amount of teachers that have not been hired back for whatever, performance issues, whatever. And I think some of them are full-time, classroom teachers. And I think the risk is probably more that they won't be replaced more than, multiple layoffs. I think you will see layoffs. But I think 6 of them could be by not replacing what's leaving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. I understand. Well, I've had a lot of time to think, Bob, since last Thursday. And
Sorry, Karen?
I said I've had a lot of time to think since
Oh.
last Thursday.
Mhm.
And even though, I really wanted to do this 200,000 towards the schools, and I still would like to find it someplace, and I know we can't. I had other thoughts about what we're starting off with next July 1. I mean, we're already $750,000 in the red to start off. And then all this other little monies that they are going to use, like the furlough money. If these people are only furloughed, say, for 6 months, come next year, July 1, it's going to be a 12-month job. And the same with union negotiations. Yeah, they're saying they don't have to pay it till they negotiate. But what's going to stop these unions from not wanting to negotiate? And also the non-union longevity, the 13,000. maybe they can get away with it this year, but is the non-union people going to put up with that again next year? I mean, they're not getting raises from what I understand. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and I am still adamant, and I don't care what anybody says. I think $1 in that planner's budget line item, just to hold a space for next year. I know it's only 27.5, but it's 27.5 that we don't have. And I cannot see hiring anybody this year when they're talking about furloughs and whatever else is going to happen. It's beyond me how they can even think about it. The inspector's job, that is an emergency. And that money will come back because these people will go out and inspect and people will be fined. So that money will come back into the general fund. And hopefully, I'm going to believe the CFO and the town manager saying that they are going to push for somebody for merit of this office, whether it's just a medical person or a nurse.
Okay.
I agree with Karen on pretty much everything she said. I think, and again, I'm not as bleak as everyone or most other people are in terms of the reductions that we're having or potentially having. I obviously agree on the planner. Not as much for the whatever 27,000 or whatever it is now, but it's a commitment of 130 with benefits next year, that we all, well, I think most want, but it's a question of most want a lot of stuff, but can we afford it? So but we did already vote on that, and as far as the schools, I still would like to get them more money.
And also, as far as the auto excise tax, I mean, I watch a lot of television, and all the auto dealers are saying, they're selling cars, and these people are going to pay excise tax on these cars next year. So maybe their estimate of what we're not going to receive as far as excise tax money in autos next year, maybe it's not true. Maybe it's not going to be a deficit of $215,000.
That's the problem. No one knows.
That's right.
And, their view of life is that if people are suffering financially, they're unlikely to go out and buy a new car this next 12-month period, and that may or may not be true. We don't know. I know the car dealers are advertising because they're trying to sell cars, but whether or not people can financially go out and buy them, that's up in the air. I mean, I don't have an answer to those questions. I think that no matter where they got it from, Austin and Anna went back to try and reduce the revenue, if you will, to keep it in line with what they're concerned about with the unknown state aid and the unknown meals tax, excise tax. The only thing that's pretty certain, fortunately, is the real estate tax. So, it gets a little dicey when we start to decide to, we're not trying to second guess what they're doing in terms of revenue projections, but it's really nothing that we can do about it.
Well, I think it seems like the majority don't want to move on it, but I still feel we can move on it. I don't think we could increase it in terms of more than what they had projected, but I think we absolutely have the ability to lessen the decrease, so to speak. But it doesn't seem like it's a road anybody really wants to challenge or go down. But I plan on doing it at the council level.
Well, what do you mean by lessen the decrease, Jim?
For example, motor vehicle excise tax, like Karen says, they're decreasing it $215,116.80. Now, one question Anna didn't say is, like 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago now, it seems like we've been doing this for an awful long time this year. But when we had one of our meetings, kind of near the beginning, when we had discussed the possible reduction, when we were kind of surprised that they hadn't touched any of the local aid. And Anna's response was they felt comfortable because those estimates are very conservative and they basically use the, I don't, maybe I'm putting a little word in their mouth, but basically use them as an opportunity for free cash because they know that we've always had more money come in than was projected. The one thing she didn't tell us was how much more. Now, you know, they had recommended 1.936 million, and the original projection I think was 2.15 million. What she told us was that, and that's just motor vehicle. I'm not going to go into the rooms. I think definitely should be reduced by that amount, but it seems to be the motor vehicle where there seems to be some discussion. And you know, the original projection was 2.15 and change. And she admitted that, you know, that's a low projection. They, you know, in any normal year, they're going to beat that projection and generate some free cash. She didn't tell us how much, if it's, you know, 10,000 or 300,000. But to reduce it by 12%, that really potentially could be reducing it 20% if they know they're underestimated by 8%. We don't know what that number is. And I do, you know, and I agree with Bob that obviously the car dealers are going to tell us, hey, it's a great time, everybody's going to be buying cars. But I don't see that major, if it's a 10%, if their original budget is 10% less than what they think it's going to be, if they're thinking they're generating a couple 100,000 from that, now they're really cutting it by 400,000, which would be 21%, 22%. So that's a pretty significant decrease. And I don't think we have the ability to say, hey, they projected 2.1 million originally, we should project 2.2. But I do think we have the ability to say they've lowered their projection to 1.93. We think it should be 1.95 or whatever. We think instead of 12%, it should be 10. Well, I do think we have the ability to do that. But, you know.
But on what basis, Jim? We don't have any.
Well, the same basis as they reduced it.
Well,
I don't think they know any more than we know on this, and probably less.
I think they've talked to other municipalities and got a sense as to what they're doing. I mean, I don't think we have any basis in fact to make a change. And so the question is, are we going to trust that their revenue projections, or are we going to suggest that, you know, no, we don't like their revenue projections, and so we're just going to pull another number out of the air? I don't think that's prudent at all.
Well, aren't we doing that with anything we do in the budget? I mean, they're, you know, in a lot of respects, they're estimates
Really?
that we think are going to be different. I mean, in a case like a capital project, that's just us saying there's not a need for it right now. But,
Right.
You know, in terms of the planner, they think it's a great thing, we need it, and they're going to say it's, you know, you're losing on potential, this, that, and the other thing. And we think it's, you know, not that all of us do, but we think, I guess the majority of us think that it should be delayed 3 months, but we are making some changes. If we don't have the ability to question, what are we spending, I don't know, 60 hours of our time doing this for?
Well, I think that it's, I think they're apples and oranges, where we make a decision whether we want to spend something or don't want to spend something, or we think that, you know, experience has shown we don't spend that much. But when it comes to projecting revenues, you know, yes, of course, they're all assumptions, and every assumption is false the minute it hits reality. But I think that there are, when you think about things from a conservative, prudent budgeting standpoint, and we are in such uncertain times, you know, that it is incumbent upon us to be as fiscally conservative as possible.
I don't disagree, and I think we've done that every year when we've shown $2 million in free cash and
Yep.
have built our reserves when a lot of cities and towns haven't. My question is, are we going over the top with conservatism? And, you know, the other thing now, you look at Medford's website, City of Medford website, and they have a letter out basically about what their thoughts are on the effects that the state is going to have on local receipts. And it's literally verbatim in a lot of it as to what was presented to us. Makes me wonder, somebody copied somebody, and I'm not sure which one it was, but I'd be willing to take a guess.
Well, it probably came from one of the municipal associations or something of that nature.
Potentially.
That
Yep.
helps, yeah.
And I think, I tend to agree with Jan that, Austin and particularly Anna, their business is town government. Anna's particularly is finance. And I'm sure they're making their best effort, their best guesstimates, if you will, on all of this. They know they've got to make up some lost revenues, and they're trying to find out how to do that. I mean, frankly, they still had to, no matter what they did, they still felt they had to borrow from the stabilization account over $750,000. So this is not an easy year. It's not a good year. And I don't think there are any direct answers to all of our questions per se, except that if we felt something was over or under budgeted, we should attempt to fix it, either perhaps reduce it or increase it. Now, I'm not saying there are, and that's why we're having this meeting, to see if anybody thinks that there are certain budgets or line items that we should look at. We looked at several the other night, and there seemed to be some rationale, like on the vehicle fuel and the vehicle maintenance. One being that fuel costs has gone down, perhaps we don't need to increase that line item. We can save some money there. And the same thing with maintenance. Newer vehicles don't require as much vehicle maintenance as the older fleet did. I mean, those make sense. To just arbitrarily decide we're going to reduce items is a different story. So I think we made some reasonably good choices and decisions. There's some rationale behind it. Whether the council will ultimately agree with us is a different story. And we have basically $47,000, I believe, of revenue that is available to be put toward other expenses if we choose to. If we can have a $47,000 surplus, I guess that's not a bad thing either. But that's kind of where we are right now. And I guess, are there any other budgets and or line items that we want to look at to see if there's anything else we want to do before we go back to look at the school, which is kind of like the elephant in the room, to see whether or not there's anything we want to do for that budget. Keeping in mind, despite the fact that the school budget was much higher and they would still like additional funds and so on and so forth, that it's getting probably 80% of the available new revenue this year. And even that's not good for them. That's not good, but reality is that's where we are. So, any other comments?
I just wanted to go back when you were talking about the email that Tracy sent us.
Yes.
I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing. I was getting there. I was looking for the part that said you could take out of, reserve funds, and I didn't see it. So I didn't know if anybody else got to read more of it than I did.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
not there.
I did, Rich. It basically said that your policy that allocates money to reserve funds, you can suspend that, or you could take something out of a special purpose reserve fund and use it for a different purpose. So you could take out of your capital reserve and use it for operating funds. That was the gist that I got of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
I agree. I think it said basically you could take out and you could use it, you could take it out of a building maintenance fund and use it for operating.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think most of those things were for towns and
Yep, they were.
stuff like that. But I think that was obviously something that, it says, it basically said if towns are fortunate enough to have a reserve fund, they can use it.
I think there might have been something in there regarding schools as well.
Yes, there was.
That they can use money this year, which we had talked about before, to pre-purchase certain things. And I think that's what they definitely intend to do. And that's partly how they're closing that gap.
Good, good. So, again, other than the items we addressed the other night, is there anything anybody would like to do, recommend on any of the other budgets?
3 times and you're out.
Yeah.
I'll sit down.
I'm here.
We have talked about the schools a lot, as we all know. Is there any thought to use that $47,000 to supplement that school budget, or?
I mean, I think we feel, I think the 4 options, you could put it in a reserve fund and let the town decide. You could put it in, I think we feel pretty comfortable that, that the building department, the inspectional services are probably, hopefully going to get some help from COVID. And I think we feel pretty strongly that Meredith is going to get money. It probably wouldn't be the smart thing to use money to hire somebody for Meredith, because then it might not be eligible for COVID. So I think we feel that we're not dissing those departments, but we feel that they're going to be helped from what we've been told. I think we feel pretty much universally that we shouldn't be giving raises to anybody in any department. So I think it shouldn't be used for that. So it goes back to, the schools
Where
are
it belongs.
reserve. Or I guess whatever anybody wants.
My view is it should go to the town council reserve. That's what we've traditionally done. Is if we took money out of anything, we put it into the council reserve.
Right. I agree.
And the council at their budget meeting can choose to use that for other purposes as well. If we don't have a strong desire to put it into a given budget or some other capital purchase or anything, then yeah, I think putting it in the reserve fund of the council and leaving it for the council to allocate is the appropriate manner.
Yeah, I would agree with Jan on the give it to the council reserve.
Anybody else feel differently?
I wouldn't vote for it, but because ultimately I do want it to go to the schools, but I don't, I don't think it's a bad idea.
Well, then I guess we either need, can make a motion to transfer it to the school budget. If you choose, we can make a motion to transfer it to the town council reserve fund. And then we vote on
Motion.
for what?
Motion to put it into the town council reserve fund.
All right.
I'll
Second,
second that.
Pardon?
I said I'll second it, Barbara. It's Jan.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No.
so the motion would be to transfer $47,000 from the town budgets enumerated in the minutes of June 3rd to the town council's reserve fund.
Bob, is it 47 even, or is it 47?
47.5.
47.5, yes, 47.5. The motion would be to transfer $47,500 of savings from several sources to the town council reserve fund to be expended by the council at their discretion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
And we have Karen and Jim?
Yep.
Okay.
So can I bring up one other thing?
Yeah,
And more for discussion, because I'm not sure how it would work. The cuts that were proposed in the revision budget exceeded the amount of cuts because they're saying there are other things like license and permitting fees and fines and forfeits, interest income, stuff like that, investment income that might be less. So I think they're over-projected the loss, over-projected the cuts, or maybe under-projected the cuts, but over-projected what they cut, so they would have extra money. One of the things that they used to offset the loss in income was to eliminate a special account that was there, which was for a town manager search, which was roughly $10,000, $10,554.59. So we have a town manager that's contracts up in August, next August, July 30th. We have a town manager that's already looked for jobs elsewhere, and I'm assuming is looking for a job right now. Even if that town manager was to stay here, we'd probably potentially begin a search in April if that town manager, if it didn't look like it was going to work out, which would be this fiscal year. We'd be looking for money. So why would we deplete an account that we're probably going to have to refund anyway? Now, again, it's $10,000. So that would either say I think the extra losses, and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, were something like 218,000, and I think they had like 217,000, in extra losses or whatever you want to call it. So now there would be a gap there of about $10,000, which one way, shape, or form. And those aren't really. I don't understand how they're budgeting. They're not assuming. They're thinking there might be a loss, but they're saying they're not going to show the loss, but they're going to project extra money. Is that? If someone could just explain that to me, how they're projecting more than they need, either they need it or they don't. And I think most of that money is coming from the furloughs, the 205,000, because that's potentially not going to happen or going to happen. And I think we all thought, well, I think a lot of us thought like a couple of weeks ago that Parks and Rec probably wouldn't be starting, and now it looks like somehow, some way they are. I don't know if we could have any sort of certainty as far as the library or senior center, but I think that money pretty much, if you look at the personnel, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, for senior center and library, is it pretty close to that number?
Yes, it is.
So I don't know what would they do, I guess just a question, if the senior center and library did open, what would they do with those potential losses? Is that something that they were just going to wait through the year and then ask for appropriation, because they're not budgeted for? So I guess my whole point in that is, why wouldn't we have the ability, if we so chose, to keep that account for the town manager search?
I have to admit, Jim, I'm a little confused, so.
And I got more confused the more I was talking, but if you look at page, I don't know, in her, what's the title of this? Town manager, in her write-up, I guess, not her spreadsheet, the write-up. You go down to like page 5 or 6, she has updated fiscal 21 projections. And that's where they talk about the excise tax, the meals tax, and the room tax. And those are the 3 items that they legitly, whatever.
Legitimate.
Those are the 3 items that they cut the budget by, or they cut the revenue projections by. And then they listed several items under that they didn't cut the budget. They didn't change the budget at all, but they feel that they might be less. They think they could potentially end up to about, $218,000 in additional losses of revenue. So what they kind of did, I think, was when they used that $750,000 from stabilization and all those other items, they added up more to the 1.2, correct? I mean, basically they added in furloughs, which they haven't really done, but they're saying potentially there's 205,000 in savings.
If the additional revenue reductions materialize.
Right. So they're budgeting for a potential revenue reduction?
But I think they're trying to budget, in this letter that you're referring to, Jim,
Yep,
I don't believe they took into account or reduced the meal sales and excise taxes.
they did do that, $283,000.
Okay,
283,
find that.
629.
All right, what page is that on then?
That's on
Five, page 5 of that memo.
underneath the graph of the chart. It says it's driven by reductions of motor vehicle, rooms, and meals excise tax to reflect trends from previous economic downturns.
It's reflected in the chart there.
Right, that's reflected. And then it says further reductions totaling approximately 218,000 are likely for local receipts. So I guess to offset that, likely, they're saying, well, we could have furloughs for 205,000. And if we did, then we would likely have money to potentially offset likely, less of receipts. I guess is what it's saying.
So the way that I understood this, and I could be wrong, is that those two items, the freeze non-union longevity and staffing contingencies, were not budgeted cuts. They are spending freezes. So it's essentially indicating to us that is where they would go should those revenue, those additional revenue deficits materialize. Again, I could be wrong because I agree it's not as clear as it could be that those are not actual budget reductions. They are places they would go to, and in the interim, they're going to freeze the spending on it.
I think you're right on the 205. I don't think if you look under in the spreadsheet. If you go to the spreadsheet, the other item she gave us, I think it's the last item on the spreadsheet is, line 578100 reserve fund appropriation. It was originally budgeted for 150,000. Now it's budgeted for 0. So she definitely did cut that one.
Well, yeah, but that's listed as a line item reduction.
Right.
But
the other one is not, the 205.
No, right.
Right.
Right, but if you look at the memo, the freeze spending includes the 13,000, not the 150,000 for union negotiations, but the longevity line and the 205. That's what she's saying totals 218 in spending freeze.
Oh yeah, the freeze, the non-union longevity, 12,000, 13,000. Right.
Right. So I think the only thing that they've done, and this is my interpretation when she was explaining it to us, is they're saying, okay, we've got this bucket of money that we've identified that could potentially become the solution to a potential additional decrease in local revenues.
But honestly, they're not going to know, I think we all agree, they're not going to know on any of this stuff until August, September, when the numbers start coming in for July and August, September, then they'll have an idea. So if they know, and if they feel in October, let's say, for example, there's going to be, we're going to be short that extra 200, are they saying that's when they're going to take the 13,000, I understand the freeze, but the 205,000, they're going to all of a sudden furlough people at the end of the year? Because that's when they're going to be knowing if they...
I would hope they act a lot sooner than that it really is based upon actual experience over the summer and into the fall, and that they act early.
Okay.
But I think they're also thinking that it's unlikely some of those places are going to open. It's not clear. It's completely not
right.
But those items are not reflected in the budget as it currently stands.
Right. So the items that she's not really budgeting for the decreases, saying that they could happen, but we're not gonna show them. That's going, if they do happen, and like you say, chances are senior center might not open in July, no matter what happens in this. So they're going to potentially have savings that they're not gonna use,
Right,
right? Okay.
right.
Which,
That's how I read it.
Keep
so I
in
guess a
mind-
long-winded answer, is there any other person that would like to discuss the town manager search staying?
Well, what, Jim, that is adding money back in.
It is, but it's adding back money back into something, it's reducing that 200 and, it is adding money back in.
Yeah, so
I'm not saying, potentially it could be out of that 47,500.
Right,
Jim, that's what I was just gonna say.
That could reduce that 47,500 to 37,000 and, probably 36,996 or whatever it is.
why? I don't,
I mean, instead of, so now you would have to make up that, that $10,554.59 would have to be made up somehow to make the budget even. So you could, we still have a pool of money of 47,500 that we could take from. In my way, if I'm thinking the way I want, if I wanted to give it to the schools, that means there's 10,000 less potentially to go to the schools. But it's one line item that wouldn't be asked for halfway through the year.
well, if you look on the other spreadsheet that we also got from them, which kind of showed the revenues and expenses for the original budget the town manager submitted, and then the adjusted town manager's budget, there is a positive revenue growth of 83,773 under the category of miscellaneous one-time revenue. And I'm willing to bet that that includes these two items here that we were just talking about. The 30,000 for the Harvard dredging feasibility and the town manager recruitment.
20,000 for the dredging, right?
Right, but I'm saying there's a bigger number here where they found small, I'm gonna say, small accounts of money that weren't otherwise accounted for elsewhere, and a positive fund of 773.
I think she had said to us previously that there were a few other things that were these old articles.
Mhm.
I mean, just from the standpoint of, the cleanliness of our books, for lack of a better term, if you've got old special purpose articles that have a balance in them, good accounting practice would say, close them out, put them back into, the overall general account, so they're not just hanging out there. I mean, that's something, it kind of goes along with the sentiment that says that we don't have to appropriate the union negotiations until they're actually ratified. We don't have to have a fund for a town manager search until we have a town manager search.
Right.
Excellent. And I think the other thing we're kind of losing sight of here is that at some point, I'm not sure when this summer, the state is going to put together a budget, and in that will be aid to
Chaos.
town. And we're going to, not we necessarily, but the council and the town manager and the CFO are probably going to go through and almost have a second budget to evaluate. And a lot of what's in here will be adjusted. Either it'll go up or down based on what actually happens. We are playing with some very unsolid funds, if you will. And I'm not sure where it's ultimately going to end up. I think if they're being too cautious and too conservative, I'd personally rather have that than being too
No,
No.
It's a difficult, I've been doing this for many years, Barbara and Karen as well. And this is
It's a
definitely
wait and see.
the most unusual budget process I've ever been through. That covers about 30 years, so,
Just about.
yeah.
Karen was in her teens.
I was.
So I guess we did vote then to transfer the 47,000 to the council reserve fund.
Mhm.
Clearly, based on this recent discussion, we have a lot of other questions and uncertainties, but unless somebody would like to make a major, not a major, but make a motion to do something with that, I think we have to try to move forward and decide if there's anything else that we feel we should be doing.
Right now, we're balanced, correct?
Yes.
Everything we've done is
Yes.
balanced. So.
Yes. I guess what amazes me is that they found these special articles, one going back to FY16, the other one going back to FY18. So in conjunction with Jan said, how many more of them are there?
Well, but Anna said to us last year in a I think it was a finance committee meeting in the town council chambers that she went through all the special articles and found them all, like Jan said, just to do best practices, and eliminated all of them. So obviously she either missed two or they thought that these were worthy, and I do think that the dredging is something that needs to be done. And it just hasn't been, whatever, we haven't had the money to go forward with it. So I think maybe that's why that one stayed. And the town manager search, maybe we will need one sooner rather than later. But she did tell us last year that she went through all the special articles and basically, like Jen just said, she said, in accounting, it's best practices to not have all these and some of them had $500 in it, some of them had $1,200 in it, and it wasn't a ton of money, but she said she had gone through. Maybe they felt that there was some legitimacy last year to these two.
that's
This year, they're
probably
just-
correct.
And this year, they're just, looking for every nickel and dime they could get.
Yeah. I would say it was a change in a judgment call.
Okay,
It sounds like.
all right. I guess the question, is there anything else now other than I'll try and put
That's it.
together a recommendation and get it out to everybody?
So just for my own clarification now, on capital, what is still in? The roof is still in, the police car is still, and not from what we've done, but just from what Anna's done and everything else. The police car is still in, the roof is still in. The water heater obviously is still in, the access road is out. Technology for the schools is out. The beach study is out or in? The beach study is out.
Mm-hmm.
The sidewalk repair is in. Police
Yes.
cruiser is in. And the stuff coming from building stabilization, that hasn't been touched at all, that 50,000. They did not reduce that at all. It just says priority, it's basically giving $50,000 to whoever to do projects, which is something I think they said they wanted to do every year. Instead of coming, I think what they said was instead of coming to burden the council with the motion, they'll just take the money and use it basically what they need, which I don't think that's the whole point of the stabilization. I think when you need something, you come and ask, but.
I think that's right. I think that's what they're doing. And in terms of taking it from the building fund, I believe the view was that since we fund it on an annual basis under the assumption that there's free cash, that there should be an allocation out of it on an annual basis, whether that's the right amount or whatever, I don't know. But I think I understand saying come to the council if you need it, but then again, if there's a fund that's capped at a certain amount, like the building stabilization is, then you should be taking money out of it if you're replenishing it on a regular basis. So I can make the argument either way.
Yeah, and I think that what she was getting at too, it's a lot of the projects that they want to do don't qualify as capital projects. So they want to be able to maintenance these buildings. Some of them are more money than maybe, 10 grand to do a special project, like to paint the police department or whatever they were choosing to do this year. And they want to have, a little bit more leverage or leeway as to what projects they could kind of do and without burdening the council, which, makes sense. Things, are just, need to be maintained at a little faster pace than a capital project. I mean, we waited for almost, I think it's 5 years now for the library roof. It's been leaking, maybe more. That's a capital project, but it probably started off as a maintenance issue and it just, parlayed. I actually found the old contract from when it was repaired. And that was a while back, but it's been 20 years, so it's probably time for it to be replaced completely. But I'm just saying, along the road, maybe they would have thrown a few grand at it and gotten a few more years out of it.
I apologize. I got a phone call coming in. I missed the beginning of this discussion, but well, I just we made one adjustment, which was to recommend that the bank study be deferred until they look at and evaluate the old study we just found. So the funding for that we're recommending not be funded. That didn't come out of the general fund though.
No, it came out of capital stabilization.
So capital stabilization then is going to be reduced by whatever that number was. 55,000.
Was,
I think it's 56,000. It's going to be
56, Joe.
Yeah. It's
the
not
fund will be increased.
right. It
Yeah.
won't be reduced.
So the 56,000 will go back to the, we'll
Back to
take
the
it
fund.
out.
Yeah.
Correct.
The other items for that capital stabilization, the library roof and the school water heater, those are continuing, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All right. And just moving down here, I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. 150,000 pilot funding for there were 4 things. And I know that the beach study is being separately funded. Was the sidewalk repair being funded elsewhere?
Sidewalk is still in, and the cruiser is still in.
And what about the technology for school? That was the other one. That's being funded elsewhere.
That's going to
Yes.
be funded through COVID, yes.
And then last was the 50,000 for building stabilization.
And that's still in.
And that's
kind of like, not a slush fund, but basically it's a fund that instead of what they're saying is instead of coming to the council for this, and that, they just want to take 50,000 out a year basically and do maintenance to buildings.
okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other recommendations we might want to make on the capital plan, or are we okay with it? Okay. All right. Well, then if there's no other motions on the budget, then what I'll do is I've already started, I will continue to write that report tomorrow and get it out to everybody as soon as possible. I guess I would suggest that we keep our Wednesday night meeting on the calendar. until everybody's had a chance to review the recommendation. If it's not necessary, we can cancel the meeting if everybody's okay with the recommendation, subject to, fine tuning it. If there are major issues, then we can discuss it on Wednesday night. My goal is to get the council its recommendation by the end of this week, so they'll have it for next Tuesday.
Bob, when we started the review, didn't we raise an item about the school and recommending taking money out of stabilization that we've not actually voted on, to include that in the recommendation?
I think we started out on going down that road. Then I think we had a long discussion about whether or not we or the council could adjust the revenue projections in the town manager's budget. I think what we concluded was that we can't or shouldn't, and that what would happen is we'd make a budget recommendation to the council, and then the council, if a motion is made by Jim or another council member to transfer money to the school, it would be done as a separate item after the budget is finished.
But are we recommending that happen? We didn't vote on that.
No, we did not vote on whether we recommend it, no. I guess
So it's not going into our recommendation.
Not unless someone makes a motion to do that.
I don't think we had the votes, or I had the votes to do that, so I didn't make it in the form of a motion.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure
I felt the, the atmosphere, and it wasn't really going that way, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that as a, matter of procedure, we didn't leave something unfinished.
It was never a form of a motion, it was just a
Just
suggestion.
The
I do
schools,
have one other question, and I don't know who I should ask. And I think I asked it at the other meeting, and I it's a public works expenses. It's from the general fund, and it was $40,000 for improvements to the land. And it's a fairly new item. Jim, was that the money from the stabilization put in for maintenance? Did they put it under improvement to land?
Is that a DPW line?
Yeah. $40,000, which in 2020 it was 5,000. In 2018 it was 5,000. In 2017 it was 5,000. So it's line item 581200.
Improvements to land.
Yep.
oh, I see it.
Improvements to land, 55540.
I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure. Let me try to find out.
What was the budgeted figure for 2020 and 19?
2020 it was nothing. In 2019 it was $4,999.71. In 18 was 5,000, and 17 was 5,000.
Somebody's eating.
Now, it does say in that part of the budget, because that's right where sidewalks are, and it's under capital. So I'm wondering if it's part of, because it says like the heading says capital outlay, and it has land, site improvements, and additional equipment. But the sidewalks are taken out. So I don't know if it's.
Yeah, the sidewalks were in the capital budget, weren't they?
Right. But this says capital outlay too as a title. I just tried to actually call Steve, but he didn't answer. Improvements to land. I'm just not. I wonder if it says it in the
In the regular,
narrative.
the book that we got on page 95, 40,000 is added to improvements to land, but it doesn't say why.
Right.
So, under the budget highlights,
Yeah. It could be, and I'm guessing right now, it could be an accounting convention. I mean, Mike, improvements to land would not be depreciable, correct? Because
Correct.
land isn't
It's not
depreciable.
depreciable.
right?
So it might have something to do with that. It may be an allocation of part of the money that's going to the sidewalks or something. I don't know.
And it's under capital outlay.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that it's
Yeah.
part of sidewalks where they actually are, leveling the ground or doing something to the ground that isn't part of the actual sidewalk itself. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
No cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt that they have a use for that money this year, because it's been a roughly a $5,000 number.
Yeah, that's why I thought maybe that's where they were putting the maintenance money that they took out of stabilization. But,
No, I think that's in Rich Safuni's budget, I think, isn't it?
okay.
Well, why don't we just ask either Steve or Anna? Probably
Yeah,
I'd ask Anna, because Steve probably won't really know the way it's been
Right.
allocated, but why don't we just ask Anna what it is?
Right. I just tried to call her also and no answer.
Jim, do you want to shoot it?
Yep, I have a note down here.
Okay, if you can do that, that'd be fine. And we'll see what the response is. If it's not we'll call it reasonable, then we'll have to talk about it Wednesday evening. If it's explainable as part of a project or projects around the town, then that's fine.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got to that.
I am.
What was that, Tracy?
We're almost there.
Almost there.
Yeah, but Tracy, you can do this all over again, with your 8 counselors.
What does that mean?
Okay, so, gotten to this point, if there's nothing else, then what I'd like to do is take motions on the 3 sets of minutes, get those passed, and then we'll get an answer presumably tomorrow. Jim, if you get an answer, you could just send it out to everybody on the 40,000. I will try to get out the recommendation tomorrow as well, and then we'll leave the Wednesday meeting on the schedule, and if we don't think it's necessary, we can cancel it.
Okay,
So figure it out.
Okay.
but we have a meeting on the 10th.
We have a meeting on Wednesday evening, yes, scheduled, right?
Yes.
But if we don't
Yes.
need that because everybody's okay with the recommendation that I circulate, that's fine. If we get a lot of changes in that, we'll just meet and talk about it. And if there's any other,
Okay,
we'll meet. If not, we won't have to.
okay. Cancel.
So,
Okay. That'll make Carla happy.
We're all
Right.
happy.
I think it would make all of us happy.
Me too.
So I guess I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes of May 27th.
We take,
I'll make a motion. Motion to accept the minutes of May 27th.
Okay. Is that Bill?
Rich.
Oh, Rich, okay. Second?
second.
Second,
Okay. I don't know who's that first one to get in there.
Karen is fine. Karen,
All right. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion of May 27th, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, then we have minutes of June 1st. Motion,
Motion to accept the minutes of June 1st.
okay. I'm
Second,
sorry.
Bill.
Who's that?
Bill.
Bill, okay. And a second?
Second.
That was
Rich.
Where? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm writing and not looking up, I can't see. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Finally, we have the minutes of the meeting of June 3rd. A motion?
Motion.
And again, who said that? Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Rich and
Right.
Jim.
Who did, Richard?
Rich and Jim second? All right.
Yep.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Minutes passed. Okay. We have actually one last thing, I guess. We didn't talk a lot about the capital budget per se. We've talked about the funding aspects of it. Is anybody has any concerns or issues with the new items that are going to be in the FY21 budget?
The new items that are still left.
The items that are in the budget, yeah, the items are still in there.
I'm fine with those.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure we didn't know we were discussing it.
Are we gonna have any kind of a narrative on the ferry?
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's the ferry. I think the ferry, the rink, and Parks and Rec, all three, they're all dependent on user fees and participation. And given the fact that at this point in time, the summer programs and the summer service of the ferry are so much up in the air, I think that we should caution the council and the town manager and town CFO to carefully carefully watch over those plans. And if it continues to be bad in terms of participation, then we're going to have to actually start looking at reduction in expense. And in most of these cases, that's going to be into the salary line. And similarly, if it's a problem in the fall, then the skating season, the hockey season, the rental of the rink is going to suffer, and they're going to have the same problem. So
Actually, hockey is
the-
starting the 15th of June.
I think the rink, and I wouldn't say we do anything with it, but I think it could end up having a slightly better year because I think we'll probably end up opening a few weeks earlier because there's such a demand to skate. And
I know
they
they're
already
planning-
they've already begun to have clinics and skill sessions for kids under 17 with certain restrictions that they have to be fully dressed when they come to the rink, and they can't use locker rooms and this and that, and they have to stay 6 feet apart. And then over the next 2 to 3 weeks, they're supposed to start getting other age groups, those over 17 involved. So I do think, and I've heard from different people over the last couple of days that most of the camps are going to begin in August. They probably won't be doing a lot in July, but we're not open anyway. We don't usually open till September, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the rink open a little bit earlier this year.
Well, Bobby starts to skate the 15th of June, and he's going to Tewksbury. And I know Winthrop Youth Hockey has already talked about Viking Camp, maybe the last week in August, which is because school starts relatively early this year. It's before Labor Day.
Okay, but I think the cautionary here is that the participation fees drive those budgets, and that they should be watched carefully over the
Right.
next few months.
Right.
I was kind of curious too. We really didn't touch any time this year on the E.B. Newton budget. Tangi was speaking about the ferry, and she didn't really touch base on the budget for the E.B. Newton. And I was just a little bit curious because that has a lot of programs that are after school or dancing, and I was kind of curious if that's going to have any negative effect where a lot of these, I think kids only's in there, and there's a dance studio upstairs with Tootie. I know we didn't really get much from Tangi on that, if that was affecting. I know they had a church in there, and it was also, they were music lessons on another floor. So I was just wondering if, that may have some effect to that budget too.
Yeah,
Enterprise budget.
are most of those on a rental basis?
Yes.
So I don't know what the annual rental period is, But
Right, it basically sustains itself, the building, you know, on the rentals, but I'm just
Right.
wondering how it's gonna go this year.
I'll mention that too.
Yeah,
No
it is
problem.
relatively small. It's slightly under 100 grand.
100 grand, yeah.
But again, it's the same idea. It's funding.
Yep.
It's self-funded, if you will.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll try my best to get everything out to everyone tomorrow afternoon. Take a look. If you think we should meet on Wednesday, that's fine. If it's not necessary, then I'll let Carl know. We'll pass on that, but we've got until midday Wednesday to make that decision, so. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Again, I'm sorry, who did that?
Tim did.
I think all of us.
Everybody, yeah. Okay, second?
Second.
All right, motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank
Good
you all.
night, guys.
Fun,
Night.
Bob.
hi, Carla, thank you.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you, Mike.
You're welcome.